She stood on the bridge, in silence and fear, for the demons of darkness had driven her here. They cut her heart right out of her chest, making her believe that the demons knew best. They were always there, sometimes just out of sight, waiting in the background till the time was just right. These demons can't be seen, but they're far from fairy tales. They live inside your mind, their evilness prevails. So on the bridge she stood, about to end the fight. Then she stopped and thought, I'll fight one more night.
Mental health. We see it all the time on TV and in music, and even in our own friendship groups. But do we, as a society, actually know how it's impacting our young people? For example, is it just a phase, or is this a serious issue that needs to be addressed? Do we know how many people committed suicide last year in 2016 due to the rising mental health issues in young people? Do parents even understand? And what advice can we give? But first, what is mental health? A mental health issue is when a person is very unhappy and anxious, worried and nervous for long periods and cannot have a normal life during these periods. Symptoms of mental health can be tiredness, loss of appetite, and sleeping problems are all classic symptoms of mental health.
It's just like your general structure. Like you can have a really good mental health or you can have a really bad. It's just how things really sway, and it's all depending on your background, really. It's like, personally, you can have, for me, I've got a pretty crap mental health, just put it down like that, and it's works different ways for people.
I can't actually answer that question. I can't define it myself, to be honest. Like, my mental health is different to anyone else's mental health.
I suppose mental health would be the well-being of the person actually as a whole, not just in terms of how they think or feel about things or their emotions, but actually even just their physical well-being can be impacted by the mental health. So I think actually mental health is a holistic outlook on our well-being.
Well, going back to the previous question where I said I've got a pretty terrible mental health, it's my mental health was really good at the beginning of, like, just in general, really good at the beginning of school, everything. Got to certain years and it just went downhill for me.
It's affected me in many ways, especially recently. I had a mental breakdown at my last job, which was a grounded function, and they didn't pay me for 68 hours. It was a full week's worth of hours, man, and literally made me break down because I had no money to pay any of my rent, any of my bills. Just, my doctor told me to go to sleep. My doctor literally gave me drugs to go to sleep for a week. Yeah, that's how bad it got.
Well, I think mental health in young people is probably the most important time in their mentality in their whole life, because obviously mental health impacts children as well, but I find that what happens to people's mental health in their youth, especially in their teenage years, has almost lifelong consequences, and that could be down to people's choices, and that could be down to the circumstances that people face. But actually, if you manage to get it right as a young person, I find that you're much more able to cope with the challenges of mental health as you get older.
Do you know the suicide rate in 2016 in young people aged between 15 to 19?
In every 100,000 people in the UK, 7 males aged between 15 to 19 committed suicide in 2016. That's 4,592 deaths that year. Girls, on the other hand, in every 100,000 people in the UK, 3 females aged between 15 to 19 committed suicide in 2016. That's 1,968 deaths that year. Altogether in 2016, 6,560 young people lost their lives in the UK to suicide.
A lot of the people I make friends with are mostly people with mental health issues. I'm not gonna lie. I can't think of a friend that doesn't have a certain issue with a certain thing.
I don't think I've ever met a young person who would describe themselves honestly as someone whose mental health is 100%. Having said that, I don't think there's even an adult who would say their mental health is 100%. That there's always things people can work on. But what I have noticed, because I've been a youth worker about 14 years now, and what I have noticed is a general deterioration of young people's mental health. And I wouldn't say that it's massively worse than the generation before now, but there are some contributing factors, I think, that make it more difficult for young people today. And that's particularly loneliness, and loneliness due to the fact that there's no such thing as a meaningful relationship for a young person anymore. Well, it's not that there's no such thing, it does exist, obviously, people do have good friends, but people spend a lot of their time connecting with the rest of the world through social media. And they're actually missing that thing that I like to call love with skin on it. In other words, meeting another human being and being able to embrace them and spend some meaningful, vulnerable time with them. And I think that has a large impact on young people's mental health.
According to the Mental Health Foundation, nearly 1 in 10 young people aged 5 to 16 are affected by a mental health problem. While many young people will grow up with a mental health issue, the Mental Health Foundation reported that the number of those experiencing problems has risen compared to 30 years ago. Many factors will contribute to how the mind develops and how well a child will be able to cope with the changes happening to their body. Some of the most common mental health problems affecting young people are depression, self-harm, GAD, PTSD, ADHD, and eating disorders.
Now we know all this information, we asked our youth worker and our 2 people going through mental health what they think about parents recognising it. Do they actually recognise mental health as a serious issue in today's young people?
Some parents do, some parents don't. It's a 50-50 way. It's my mum can recognise mental health as she has to, because working as a carer she has to, but parents don't normally see it. They see their child as just having like a down day, like it's just one of those days, tomorrow they'll be perfectly fine, and it turns out to be not just a day, not just a week, not just a month, but a whole year plus, and it's really upsetting. Because
only parents that have it themselves, really. My parents have many mental health issues. My mum has depression, my dad has schizophrenia. It's not a fun thing, I'm not gonna lie.
I think most parents, obviously if their young person was struggling, they would obviously want to help with that. So I do think that in general my experience of parents has been that their concern for their teenagers when they're not feeling right is good, and they try to do something about it. Sometimes they don't always go about it the right way, and that's possibly because parents are so emotionally invested in the health of their teenagers they don't know how to behave right in that moment. And so so parents can sometimes be over hands-on and potentially can cause some more damage, but the intentions are good, is because they love their children.
Now we know all this information, there's still one question we need to ask, and it's the most important question out of this entire project. What advice can we give to someone going through mental health issues?
There's lots of advice that I could give being in that sort of situation, but the best advice that I could do is talk to people, be it parents, friends, brothers, sisters, support workers, anyone that's trained in this sort of stuff, a doctor, or just generally someone that's really close to you, like a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
If I was talking to myself about what I would say to a young person, I would say, don't try to be their messiah, as in nobody can fix another person. Actually, the only person that can, I suppose if the right word is fix their problems, is themselves. But what you can do as a person is you can listen, and you can spend at least twice the amount of time that you listening than when you speak, because actually that's really what most people need, is just someone to listen to them and have them feel like they're hearing their problems.